From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me, joining me live, Bob. Bob, thank you very much for being on the show. The way I love to do it, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So please tell us more about yourself and your work.
Well, Mehmet, thank you for having me. I appreciate being on. So my name is Bob Lamendola. I'm the Senior Vice President of Technology for Ricoh North America. My background is in corporate IT. My first half of my career was spent in corporate IT. Second half spent as an IT services managed service provider. So I always tell people I had the benefit of being a consumer of technology and then being a buyer or a seller of technology. So it's always given me a unique perspective on both sides of being a provider as well as being a consumer. In my current role, I've been in the current role I'm in is really two parts of it. It's infrastructure, IT infrastructure, applications, and security, sort of the internal responsibilities for Ricoh North America. But I also have a R&D, a technology R&D part of my job where I'm building new services for our customers, annuity-based, excellent service mentality. So I have a wonderful team that works very well together, and really bringing the external, internal world together is where I've been focused to make sure that we actually, when we sell those services, we can deliver them successfully and most importantly, safely.
That's great. Now, as someone who's also, come from the same domain, I would say, I always ask my peers, like, what drove you to this side? And, why did you choose to be? Because, like when we talk about the thing that we do, it's not easy, it's challenging. So what attracted you to that, Bob?
Sure. So being in IT for such a long time, and learning through experience, what threats can exist, and having many experiences through my career, both as internal corporate IT, but also delivering services where you have responsibility for customers' infrastructure and their data. You gain a huge appreciation, particularly through real scares that challenge you. And it puts you in a position where you gain a very real world understanding of the responsibility to protect assets, data, and companies. So that is really where I come from. I come from, I don't want to call it fear because that makes it sound so negative. It's not that place. It's really a respect for the threats that are available, and they could be very small. Like sometimes they could be the most mundane things that create the biggest problems, but you gain respect for managing and what's required to manage large, complex infrastructure. And in today's world, where it's so hybrid, where it's so intertwined, where the boundaries of your organization extend far beyond the walls of the building you sit in, it becomes an immense challenge for companies of all sizes to really meet that challenge. So I find it to be a challenge. It was through scare and frightened kind of experiences where, like, what was going on and how do we let this happen, to gaining respect for proactive and prospective planning for security. And then, understanding that it's a never ending cycle. You always need to be on your guard.
100%. But if I want to, I'm asking this because people think that this is something very new. Of course, things are evolving, but if you want to compare the amount of threats out there, the amount of things that we needed to think about before, let's say, because I'm also like old in this. But just to give the audience an idea how things are evolving and how they are evolving, and why do you think also like this is something becoming bigger and bigger over time?
Well, it started from people just being inquisitive. People were trying to challenge. I can do this. I wanted to challenge getting through security, and almost became like a little bit of a technology challenge. Then people realized they can make money, and there's ways to actually monetize being a threat actor or monetize and using ransom as a way to gain money. And then you get digital currency that made even the transactions associated with capturing money and people paying ransoms. It became big business, and it is big business at the end of the day. Now, of course, you get nation state threat actors that are after sort of information to use for whatever political gains they may have. But that is, I would say, that's just one aspect. The bigger aspect is because it's become big business. And that really exploded, I think, the opportunities and the people that get interested in this to use that as a competitive advantage, to use it as a way to extract money from organizations, to use it as a threat. I think that's really where it started to change and become something that's just an everyday, 24/7, always on situation.
Now, the question that immediately comes to mind, Bob, is we've been, sorry, we've been investing very heavily and these things keeps happening. Why?
People, Matt, at the end of the day, so most threats and most challenges, most exposures come from people. And it's not people doing things purposely, although there's an element of that too. There's people that specifically get coerced into creating opportunity. So really, at the end of the day, the weakest link in the chain, you could put a lot of technology in place. You could have all the business policies and procedures in the world to kind of adhere to what our right principles and good principles have. But at the end of the day, people still tend to be the weakest link. So the focus always has to be on people. How do you raise awareness? How do you accentuate the sensitivities? How do you bring people to the brink of understanding, not just in their personal life, equally important, but in their professional life, they have a responsibility. So I always look at the people aspect of it as being the most important thing to protect. And you have to constantly be there. You have to constantly remind people there's new and challenging ways. AI is changing sort of the matrix, so to speak. It's creating a whole host of new and interesting challenges for people to recognize when I'm being attacked or not. So it's the people part of it. Of course, you need all three. You need people, process, technology. All three need to be in harmony. But I always look at people as the thing that really which have to focus the most attention on.
That's great. And I have like two follow-up questions which are related, if you don't mind, Bob. So the first one, we talk about people. So when we say people, is it like, are we not educating, the end user, enough? Or is it, do you think, it's just, it's a human nature that we do always mistake? Like, where do you think, we can put more effort to, at least I know like we cannot eliminate it 100%, but at least make it better.
Yeah. So I think there's enough education. You can always do more. There's what, like, when is enough? Almost never is enough. So there's more education we can do. Where we go, we overeducate in some ways. So sometimes it comes a little white noise. You got to be very careful. But really, where the awareness comes in is you have to have specific use cases. This sophistication that is entered into sort of this arena is really where the challenge comes. So it's yes, a little bit of education, but also people get the tools are so easy to use that sometimes they just get enamored with the fact that I can do things quickly and not necessarily recognize that maybe I'm not doing the right things. So it's not just do quick. Am I doing the right things in the right way? So it is definitely a little bit of an education, but I'd say we educate and put them out. But I think really comes down to the education has to be very specific awareness. And I think you have to make users understand that there are different ways in which you can be attacked. And it's a not easy sort of cycle. It always becomes a challenge. Whatever you taught last quarter, you got to look at what news out there and remind them it's a different way. And that's the hardest part. So I think it's a human challenge. I don't want to say it's necessarily an education. I think it's a human challenge. Some people have this, I'm a tinkerer. I like to try things. I like to do things, and ramifications sort of I'll deal with that secondarily. And you really have to sort of look at those folks, embrace them in the right way, not stunt the creativity and the innovation and the curiosity, but understand, make sure there's respect for it. And that's the hard part. I think that's the balance, striking the right balance between the two.
Yeah. And this is related to the second question. Do you think that people, and even sometimes mainly small organizations, they underestimate, the threat or the risks?
So absolutely. I think, now where this was this was a big company problem several years back. It's an every company problem now. There is nobody that's immune. And SMBs, mid-market, even customers, some customers in the mid-market, and we because our IT services really lean into mid-market and SMB, you get to see a lot. And when you start to simple things, you want to improve their password policy, which should be 101. You get pushback from people like, I don't want to put a 12-character password in and I'm looking, sometimes people say that, you shake your head. I'm like, okay, there's a problem here. It's a cultural problem. So yes, I do think you get a wide breadth of that. I do think big company problems really are every company problems. I think it's a cultural thing. Companies, it has to come from the top. The company has to have a culture that we are stewards of the data we're responsible for. And if it doesn't come from there, you're going to really be fighting a tough battle.
Yeah, that's true. And this is also, I believe, like, there is a little bit something on us, the professionals in the field to keep educating. And I know, and this is what I want to ask you just out of curiosity, because one of my guests told me, like, because also as end user, as me as customer, right? So I'm sitting, behind my desk, and I'm bombarded with information, and I'm bombarded with multiple people trying to tell me, hey, if you just have this one more tool, you're fine. Right? So Bob, like, you have the experience, and you just mentioned that the landscape have changed. So let's just take one step back, and let's say I'm a CISO, or I'm maybe an IT director, infrastructure manager, and I'm trying to make things better. So where should I start, and how I can eliminate the noise and get the buy-in? Because at the end of the day, it's money that gonna talk. So what do you advise here?
So, the technology leader of the past is a different character. It's a different personality. You need to be a unifier. You need to be a collaborator. You need to spend the time to work with different people to have them understand. If you come in with a hammer, all you're going to get is resistance. So you need to find a way to invite those folks in and help them understand and help build the strategy, make it their strategy. In the past, because I've lived through this in many ways, we would just come in hard. This were the rules. You couldn't break the rules. And, in a company of the large, particularly large, even a mid-sized company, they say, yeah, but I know better than them. I can do it myself and I can do it fast. And if you don't understand that is a natural human reaction to influence, and you don't embrace those people and bring them in and help them understand, now that takes a lot of time and patience. So it's a different way. Your personality, your charisma, your ability to work with people have to be part of the equation, because if you don't do that, you're always going to open the door for someone to go and break the rule, or someone's going to go and extend what you mean by I can't do, or look at doing so. Yes, I hear what you're saying, but I need this to do my job better. So you have to embrace the leadership teams. You have to embrace the people on the line, and you have to really work at it. That is enormously challenging because it takes a different mindset, and you have to take a deep breath and recognize everything you hear, you're not going to like, but don't fight it. Learn from it. Is the only thing I can sort of give as advice.
Yeah, great advice. Now, you mentioned a little bit, Bob, about it's not only what is in our building. So now we have cloud workloads, we have remote work, which became, almost the standard. Like, of course, like, still hybrid model is one option.
Yeah.
But majority of the companies, like, across the globe, they understood that hybrid is here to stay. And when we say hybrid, of course, we need to rely on more services. We need to rely on more technologies which are not under our direct control. So how do you think this is, first, a direct challenge for companies, because they're going to be relying on other services, and assuming that, yeah, we have to accept it, how we can enhance our security postures when it comes to cloud?
Sure. And this is a reality. This is an everyday reality too, as well, because even the most secure companies that we've seen so many things come in the news, the best SaaS companies still wind up getting attacked as well. And they become an extension of you. So a few ways to look at this. Number one, your procurement processes really need to evaluate companies, and security assessments and understanding what your requirements are and having your vendor certified to certain levels. It sounds very mundane and sort of like very pedestrian, but it's an absolute requirement. You have to make sure your contracts, your vetting security, the vendors are responsible. They have a response capability. There's an understanding of liabilities. And again, it sounds so boring to say that, but it's so super important that you bring on vendors that share those values. And there's some contractual requirements for that. That's step one. Step two, you must treat identity management and the extended world with the highest reverence. And what I mean by that, as you extend out shared authentication or identity management capabilities, it must extend into those cloud partners. So you must spend a good amount of time understanding how to bridge together your identity management infrastructure and those third-party vendors. And that when changes are made, they propagate immediately. The biggest gap you find in cloud services is an employee leaves an organization, but they don't have it extended out to their cloud partners or SaaS partners. And you still have authenticated capabilities at those third parties with great exposure. So that extended view of identity management and identity and overall how you build that structure is super important. And of course, it has multi-factor to a very high degree, and that you embrace that as a core principle. If that's a very technology-oriented point of view, but you must do that. If that is not part of sort of the ecosystem you're building, your cloud architecture, you're sort of creating exposure. And the third thing you mentioned is hybrid work. Now, we've had hybrid work even before the pandemic. Pandemic just put it on supercharge. It just meant everybody was doing it. Okay, we have more capacity issues, quite frankly, than anything else. But it did expose a few things that we had to take care of, things that you just sort of say when you have a small percentage of remote workers, it was kind of something that was important, but you kind of got to. Now with the extent of that hybrid workforce that gets created, everything that's an edge device is important. Everything. Printers, of all things. Anything with an IP address that's connected to your VPN is a problem, is a concern. So you must look and have the ability to not just touch all the edge devices, your remote connectivity, but also monitor those. That has really been a sort of a realization, I think, that everyone's gone through in this pandemic. And now it's a forever thing. It will forever be something you're responsible for. So the vulnerability management programs that you have, and actually good inventory of what's connected to your network, have quickly be able to identify those things and react, even in the hybrid world, is super important. You must be able to take focus on it.
Right. And, just a reminder, or let's say disclaimer for people, because they think, okay, now we migrated to the cloud, security of the data is not our problem anymore, which is not true, right? So because, even the big hyperscalers, they would tell you,
Right.
we're just providing you the infrastructure, the data is yours, and it's your responsibility to secure that. So just as a reminder for everyone who's listening or maybe watching us, that you need to put this onto a priority, which, spot on what you mentioned, Bob, around that. Now, if I want to, advise, and I'm asking you this question, so I'm a leader, where they should focus their strategies. We talked about a bit the people, we talked about the technology, we talked about some other stuff. But if I want to make a priority, where do we start?
Yep. So it's the same three dimensions. It's people, process, technology. But let's talk about technology first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best defense is a good offense. So what I mean by that is you really need to focus from the inside out. You got to protect your edge devices, go to your network layer, go to your identity management, go to your third-party providers, and have a vulnerability management program over the entire structure. If you don't look at that, if you think one point solution is going to be the answer to everything you need, you're missing the boat. You have to have defense in-depth methodology. You must have a layered approach, and the vendors you choose must work together. Overall, you need to have some type of SIEM or security event management overlay to make sure that any sort of anomalies in the environment, you have an ability to detect. Now move the process. You must have not just the ability to train and have procedures and policies in place, but also your incident response processes must be tested thoroughly. You must do tabletop exercises repeatedly because organizations change, people change. The most important thing to happen is response. If you think something's happened, you must move quickly. So that means you must test your response processes, your incident management process, and your communication process associated with that. Sometimes what happens is in a chaotic situation or an emergency situation, the team gets so focused on fixing the problem that they forget there's an outside world that you must communicate with. So you must thoroughly vet those processes. I would suggest to everybody spend time to how would you react if you had a breach? And then we talked a lot about people. When we do the tabletop exercises, we invite every department to participate. We ask them to participate. We do it really tight. We only make it an hour to 2 hour kind of session. We do it very, very streamlined, but we ask them to simulate. Then we throw curveballs at them. I'm going to say the communication person is going to be on vacation. So I privately go back and said, don't be on the call. See how the team is going to react. And I try to do that in such a way to create chaos, a little disruption. And the reason why we do this, I want to see, do they have the wherewithal to figure out who's then going to do it? What are we going to do? How are we going to escalate? Because the norm is not the norm. The norm is what you build. And then you have to adjust for the abnorm. So those are really, if you're going to start, you have to start with technology, make sure you have a good framework, understanding where your gaps are. Go into the process, make sure you have good business processes, good incident management process, and good training programs. And then go to the people. Will the teams react accordingly to situations that occur? If you can do those three things, and it's always an evolving situation, you're really setting yourself up for the best success. It's not a matter of, this is sad to say, it's not a matter of if it will happen to you. It's a matter of when it will happen to you. Right. Nobody's immune. That's just the reality of the world we live in today.
Yeah. And again, thank you for mentioning this book, because again, back to the point that, it's just the big guys who might be affected. It's not the case. And especially because, I focus in my show on startups and even like small, medium and businesses. And then guys, you are in more danger, because probably, the bad actors will know or will try to think this way. Okay, they don't have enough budget, so probably they are easier targets for me. And you have IPs, you have intellectual properties, like anything that you have, sensitive data, like it might be just the list of your customers, and it's enough, right? So, and they will tell you, hey, if you don't pay the ransom, we're gonna like put the data on a dark website or whatever. Now, because we mentioned and you touched base on in the beginning on the cryptos and how this allowed ransomware to become like more widespread across these bad actors. But other than this, and we just mentioned also the governance, but I want to hear from you from what you are seeing, Bob, what are like the other business challenges when it comes to cybersecurity, like especially when it's something related to the industry itself, like where do you see it more fragile, I would say?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's almost a dynamic question. But I see the biggest fragility comes into people only looking at what's considered to be IT as the exposure. Now with the Internet of Things, where everything has an IP address, some things that would fall into, even if you go to industrial manufacturing shop floor, the devices on the shop floor now have IP addresses, right? And those become, and they have their own security and their own software and their own patching cycles and whatever is proprietary software. Everything now in the connected world is a potential exposure. So it's no longer just what's in the data center anymore. It's extended so much beyond that. And so the challenge that I see is I don't think there's a wide or broad enough recognition that anything that connects to your network is a potential concern, even those things that connect wirelessly. So I think that's the biggest gap that we have in terms of just the technology architecture point of view, for Rico, because MFPs and copies are a legacy. We take a high concern for those kind of devices. But I see this in large companies where the exposure comes from something you would never expect, just something you would never expect, because it's not considered technology or IT, and therefore it does not get the same consideration. That is what I find to be the biggest concern.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think there was some stories like a couple of months back where, some organizations were hit, because of some printers or some edge devices, where the hackers or the bad actors, they were able to find their way in. Now, saying this, how much is the role of the dealers, let's say technology dealers, to minimize also the cyber threats to the customers?
So by extension, dealers now are part of the equation. Dealers must also pay attention to these because they become, when they're selling into these SMB marketplaces and they go to these customers and they're putting these edge devices on there and they're doing the service and support sometimes if they're not relenting on the manufacturer. They present themselves. They can expose their own businesses by being guilty, perhaps, of leaving something open that they shouldn't, but also they're exposing those customers. So the dealers, and I work with many of our dealers sort of that understand this, but it's not as pervasive as you would hope. There's now a renewed recognition of the fact that those devices, now some of them rely upon the manufacturers to fix that, but often when they're installed depending on how they're installed. So of course, if people leave all the default user password, there's nothing in the world you can protect that. Now, there is some technology help that's coming along that's allowing us to go to the edge devices and understand when default settings were not changed or something. We can do that for dealers, but dealers must also embrace the same capability. So there's much more emphasis placed on remote management, remote monitoring, even of edge devices like printers. But dealers have to really be on that same path with us and really understand and work with their manufacturers to make sure what innovations that they're creating so that they can extend it out to their customers. It's no more pass-through. Dealers are part of the equation for sure.
Yeah, it's like part of the supply chain, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Now, this is an interesting one because you also have this long experience, Bob. From your perspective, which department you think is the most vulnerable one? Where attackers usually start?
Yeah, it's shifted a little bit, but I think there's really two. With procurement. Procurement tends to be a real good opportunity because procurement people get invoices all the time from vendors and they can just click on here and, it's past due. Those tend to be a good one. And believe it or not, HR tends to be a really good one because they're acquiring talent, new people coming in, linking in. It tends to be an easy way to gain some information if they're not aware. So those are the two departments, procurement and HR, that we see a lot. And the third would be sales. I have a great love for salespeople. I really do, because I enjoy talking to customers and I love when salespeople get involved. But they move very fast. And sometimes they move because they're moving fast. They're not always, and they're so excited when they get a new opportunity. Sometimes they're not looking through the opportunity to understand, is this really an opportunity? Or is someone trying to coax me into sharing information that I shouldn't? So those are really the three dimensions. Procurement for sure. There's a lot going on in the procurement supply chain area where you see very targeted phishing attacks, spear phishing, where they gain some information from the vendor and then they come to the procurement organization. They try to sort of get them to share a little bit more and then they use it as a way in. HR talent is a huge issue with most companies. So they use that, the recruiting methodologies, to sort of get in and find opportunities. And once they get hold of names and people, then they use that for targeting spear phishing attacks. And then the third is sales. Opportunities and leads where salespeople get very enamored when they're trying to sell a lot and they get I'm gonna say it's not sloppy or lazy. It's not a fair way to put it. Excited. They get overexcited by the opportunities and maybe go a little further than maybe they should. So the awareness has to come in those three dimensions because those are most likely getting some external influence. And they would get, like if I get an external email, I pretty much know what it's about. If it's somebody I know, it's somebody I know. If somebody I don't know, I'll be. But I'm not getting barraged like those other three groups. Those three groups get barraged each and every day with external.
Yeah, and just because I remembered something mentioning, these phishing attacks, Bob. The challenge thing is, and because you mentioned at the beginning, it's about human nature. So these bad actors really they are getting better and better. So for example, they choose a weekend, a Friday night to, for example, impersonate someone, maybe an executive or maybe the CEO, CFO, whoever. Hey, I need this now. Please send it to me. And of course, like if you are in the office or sitting at home, whatever, you panic and just you click the link or you send the document and it goes there. So it's really, really challenging. And because you mentioned about you said about the changes of the cloud and all this and remote work, and you mentioned AI. Do you think AI will help us reduce the at least the amount of attacks we see, or do you see like because of the bad actors using the AI, actually now we're gonna see like more attacks happening? What's your point of view around this one?
So the answer is absolutely both. Let's go the dark side first. We'll talk about that first. AI is definitely having an impact on threats. The impersonation capabilities are far superior. The ability to use AI and aggregate data and then come to you with things that sound so legitimate and real in the language, in the terms that the writer would actually use, because they start understanding and they use external communications as a way to sort of shape the spear phishing attack, then it sounds like they're writing it in the person of actually legitimately who they are. So they create hallucinations and all kinds of other things. It absolutely is a bigger threat, much more than ever before. Same token, let's talk about the positive side. AI is already having a huge impact. The most important thing you can do is aggregating data and reacting. AI has the ability to predict. So when you're doing event correlation from multiple sources and using AI to look for patterns in that event correlation, and then be able to recognize, hey, this is based on all the predominance information I got, this is a severious, go take action. Or if you're even more advanced, use an AI to actually take an action, shut down a service, shut down a capability, shut down an access proactively. So AI absolutely has a great ability to accelerate the ability to event correlation. Event correlation is the key. That's the holy grail in response. The holy grail in response is right there. Event correlation aggregation as fast as humanly possible. Well, in the case of AI, inhumanly possible. But also, AI has the ability to then help you take predictive actions. The climate and the attitude, and this is where it gets into culture. My company, our company, in the past, if we shut down services, even if we knew it was a threat, we would get incoming emails. Hey, what are you doing? How come this is down? It's crazy. We've raised the sensitivity and awareness in the culture where we proactively shut down service for a period of time because we were not sure. And the climate is such that people understand.
Mhm.
And it's changed completely. So getting back to AI. So we actually are investing in a few different ways to use AI for event correlation, and then eventually taking action or writing scripts associated with shutting down service, whether they're suspect. So those are things where I think AI has great promise. I think it's really, AI ops was something that got created a few years back, and using AI to improve operational efficiencies. Security now has taken that up a significant level. All the labor providers and vendors, I get inundated with, hey, let's sit down for half an hour, do a briefing on what we're doing with AI. Everybody's doing something with AI, and specifically security vendors, the leaders in the industry.
Yeah, true. It looks like we will be seeing AI fighting against AI in the cyberspace.
Totally agree
Uh,
with that. Totally agree with that. A little frightening. Doesn't make me sleep very well, but yes, that's true.
in one side, the good thing on one side, of course, it's not good in the sense of good, but I mean, at least us, people who work, especially in maybe, security operations centers, will have tools that allows them to react faster,
Absolutely.
and rather than doing trial and error. You know, again, I'm highlighting this couple of times. The bad actors are really sneaky. Like they change their, even before AI, they keep changing their tactics. They keep changing, the way they interact, even with their victims. And this is, guys, if you're listening to this, like, this is an important discussion. What Bob mentioned now, this is just a small part of the biggest threat that you might be under. And like, Bob, like, do you think we will reach a phase where, these things will become something minimal, or, we're gonna see it like always happening, like no end
Well,
to that?
so I think it'll always happen, but I think the sophistication is starting to swing. And what I mean by that is swing back where like I said, the awareness and recognition of companies and people to be protected and to be less, like I said, start from the very beginning. We talked about, where do I think the weakness link? Unfortunately, it's people, right? And I think we're starting to address the people aspect of it, because it's so pervasive in the environment. You hear and sense it everywhere. Turn on the news, listen to a podcast, go on some news feed, you're going to hear something about cybersecurity each and every day. It happens all the time. So the awareness is certainly starting to grow. So when you talk to customers, even small customers, about, hey, what do you do in cybersecurity? You get at least an interest before you get a blank stare. Like, I don't know what we're doing anything. Well, we have AV. Like, no, antivirus is not going to be enough to do it. You need to go a little further. So again, I think the tide is turning on that, but it's always going to be a constant battle of wills, meaning that the threat actors, because the money is so severely It's such a huge opportunity to gain money and create wealth that there's always going to be a threat to data. So there's, as much as I think the tides are turning, it's not going to be you're never done thing. It's always going to be you have to just up your game a little bit more and up your game a little bit more and stay astute and common and really on task. And that's why companies that don't have somebody that live, breathe, put their head down on a pillar, wake up in the morning thinking about security is probably going to have concern.
Yeah, true. Now, as we come to an end, Bob, like you said, like you're doing some, work on in R&D. Can you share some cool stuff, with
Sure.
us?
Sure. Well, I'll go down the AI thing in a moment there because it's kind of interesting where we're trying to apply it. But a lot of our R&D is building. We're trying to take a lot of our standard services and building them in a framework where we've adopted digital platforms as approach, meaning that we deliver our service through a same common interface so that the customers can experience in a similar way. And that's all different type of solutions, traditional solutions as well as new digital capabilities, so that the interface of the customer is very common. They get familiar with them, and then we driving analytics, insights, and then using some predictive analytics and some AI to actually give customers advice. Hey, if you did this and changed the way in which you scanned or created these forms as we're capturing that data, you can increase your efficiency by 15% over the next 12 months. And we're doing that based on predictive analysis. Those are the things that are really gaining market share and opportunity in the industry because customers are looking for ways to uncover new revenue streams. And we're trying to expose that. So if we're doing data capture in a claims management workflow, or we're doing remote patient monitoring because hospitals are suffering through severe issues with staffing, and we're able to provide and expose that information and help them allocate their resources where they're needed most. If we can help companies do that and have a single interface for all of them to experience many different solutions, now we're bringing extreme value and making ourselves extremely important in those organizations. So that's what we're focusing. AI, there's a lot of opportunities for AI. It's almost like I could do a whole podcast just on that alone. But specifically, where we're learning the most is so much of this country is still paper-based, and ignored in the mouth. Honestly, still so much in healthcare still depend on facts. It's such an old technology. And it's almost like shocking when you sort of understand how some of these business processes work, because all investments in some of these businesses go to different things. It's not about operational efficiency. It's a huge opportunity for us to bring order to the chaos. That's why our slogan is we love too much information. We literally love it. Everyone says they have too much information. I want to go in there. I want to talk to them. We have a way to organize that. We have a way to manage that. We have a way to bring value out of that, because there's technology, specifically AI, with data capture capabilities and applying that, learning from what it did last time to do it better the next time, where it's sort of an easy adopter. So that's the exciting part. I love that part of R&D. It really where we can bring value. I'm not into technology for the sake of technology. If anyone asks me, what do you believe in? What is your belief in technology? I said, if we're not innovating around customer requirements, if we're not innovating with our customers, we are wasting our time. If we're going to sit in a back room and sort of dream up something and bring it to the market, and are we going to find something? That's not it. Now, in startups, that's an excellent way to go. You want to build in that sort of quarantined area. Let's build something really exciting and go find a market. But in large companies, you have to be able to be innovating around your customers. So R&D for me is very close to my heart, and I do enjoy it a lot because I like working with people.
That's great, Bob. But to your point, actually, even startups, they have to, research the market and see, they have to go out of the building and see what actually the market needs. So this is why I also enjoy working with customers a lot, because to solve real business problems using technology. This is my, this is why my passion, I would say.
Me too.
Bob, where people can find about you and about your company?
Sure. Invite anyone to look me up on LinkedIn. I think the team, our communications team, PR team, does a great job of keeping me forward. But I always often find things that drive interest for me, and I'll post those very clearly. I enjoy. I would say I'm a moderately active person on LinkedIn. I'm not overly active because if I'm posting something or putting something out there, it's because it's personal to me or believe it. It's a passion of mine. I just don't do it for clicks and likes. I'm not really like that, but I do, so please feel free, folks, to reach me out on LinkedIn. I enjoy connecting with people. And then when I'm not there, I'm traveling with my family. My family is, my heritage, my background, I'm Italian, very close Italian family, very close, very big family. I'm always with, if I'm not working, I'm definitely with my family, going playing golf or fishing or doing things together. It's a way for me to break away from always being working. But that's where you can find me. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. I would be more than happy to do so.
Great. Thank you very much, Bob. And of course, I think this is a reminder for all of us that sometimes we need to take time off and enjoy, far from all the noise that's happening. I've been in this, since 9 months, and wow, it's a lot of changes happened in 9 months since I started the podcast. So, at your point, yes, definitely we need a clean mind to be able to perform. And at the end, again, thank you very much, Bob. Is there anything that, this is the thing I always ask, is there anything that I should have asked you?
About cybersecurity, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And it's the only other thing I would say is it's nothing to fear. And, sometimes people I get it. It's a challenge for me. It's, when I look at things like this and there are really problems where, it doesn't seem like we can solve that. I think that everyone has to look at these situations as we can solve this together. You don't have to be fearful of it. And really, if you embrace the challenge, I think there's always a way to make an improvement. So it's about being positive in that way and not really cowering back and thinking this is insurmountable. I don't ever believe any challenge, any problem is insurmountable. And I think if you could take that attitude just even a little bit, it's something that I think that for the most part, us as an industry can resolve.
This is, I would say, a great advice from you, Bob, at the end of this episode. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all the valuable information that you shared with us today. And this is how I end my episodes usually, for people who tuned in. Thank you very much. If you're listening to this or if you're watching this, thank you very much again. And please keep the feedbacks coming. I enjoy reading feedbacks. And also, if you are interested to be on the show, don't hesitate, reach out to me. We can arrange for that. Time zone is not an issue, as I always say. And thank you very much for joining us today. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.